I guess my first question is just really what has brought you here to Lethbridge today?
Yeah, as you know, you will have a referendum October 19, and that's important for the future of Alberta, but it is important also for the future of the country. And I received an invitation to come and to speak because we are the only national political party in Canada that is for the start the process to have a binding referendum maybe in a year or two. As you know, in that question, it's not a question about if Alberta will be independent or not. It's a question about, if you read the question pretty carefully, you want Alberta to remain a province, or you want Alberta to start the process to have a binding referendum on the secession later. So our position as a national party, we are the only party, contrary to the Conservative or the Liberals, who are saying to Albertans, you need to vote to start the process to have a binding referendum on the secession, because that will give you negotiation power, that will give you leverage with Ottawa. And we know that the status quo is not acceptable anymore. So contrary to Poilievre and the Conservative, Poilievre is a member of parliament from Alberta, but is not fighting for Albertans. You know, no changes on equalization. And I know that Albertans, it's very important for them to have a debate about the equalization. As you may remember, a couple of years ago, Albertans voted with 62% saying we need to abolish, we need to change the equalization formula. It's unfair. And I agree with them. We are the only party that will change the formula and cut the equalization payments by half. At the same time, Albertans want to control their immigration. They don't control that. In Quebec, we have a little bit more power over immigration, and I believe that it would be fair for Albertan to have the same. So our position it's to say, you know, we need to have a big reform, a big revolution in Ottawa, and we need to have a radical decentralization. And the only way for the Liberals and the Conservatives to understand that, it's for Albertan to vote to start that process, because that will start the negotiation. And if at the end of this negotiation they have a fair deal, that fair deal will be good for every province. And if they're not able to have a fair deal, but they will have a real referendum on secession later. So there's no risk for Albertans to vote to start the process.
Of course, all these grievances are over years of development. I just want to kind of get your thoughts over, I guess, this last year of Carney's administration and their working relationship with the Premier and her administration too, whether it's developments in, you know, the building of major projects in natural resources. I just kind of want to get your thoughts on how that relationship has been going.
But I must say, since the creation of that province of Alberta in 1905, you know, the way that Ottawa is looking at you, Albertan, here, it's you are like subordinate to Ottawa. You are like a colony to Ottawa, because in the beginning, in 1905, you didn't have the right to develop your own natural resources. Other provinces at that time had that right, but not Albertan. You needed to fight for 25 years, and you were able to have the control over your natural resources in 1930. So the deal that you have with Ottawa is not fair. So you need to change that. And what's happening right now with Carney is saying to Albertans, you know, you will have a pipeline and you'll be able to develop your natural resources. But at the same time, is blocking the development of natural resources. And we need that because Alberta is the engine, the economic engine of this country. And we need a strong Alberta. So what he's doing, I understand that Carney and Danielle Smith, they have a deal for the development of pipelines, but at the same time, it is conditional for having a carbon capture investment. But for me, we don't need to capture carbon. Carbon is not a pollutant. It is a gas that is essential for life. And I think that carbon capture schemes will be very expensive, and at the end, you won't be competitive. Your oil and gas won't be competitive in the international market because you'll have to pay for that carbon capture. And I understand that people in the industry are not so happy with that. So you don't have a fair deal. Carney try just to please you, but at the same time, it's only empty promises.
Of course, you obviously state your position that it's best that the process at least goes forward in a binding referendum for separation. Do you have the position that separation is best for Alberta in the long term?
But for me, I believe in this country, and I'm supporting the independentists right now. But the debate, it's not about the independence. The question is not about Alberta being a sovereign country. The question is, do you want to stay a province? Do you want to do you accept the status quo that you cannot develop your natural resources, you cannot control your own immigration. At the same time, you cannot have your pension fund. You can have there's a lot of grievance that Albertans have that the status quo is not the answer. So try to have a new deal which start the process, and maybe in a year or two you'll have that debate. But for me, if you have real negotiations, that will help to keep this country. But we need that radical decentralization. The People's Party is the only party that is speaking for that, and we are the last chance for this country. If we don't have a radical decentralization, maybe Alberta will vote for the independence at a second referendum. But don't forget, in Quebec, we will have a provincial election this October, 2 weeks before your referendum. And actually, right now, the Parti Québécois, the PQ, is in advance in the polls, and they may win the election. And the PQ is telling Quebecers, if you vote for me, it's a vote for another referendum. So yes, we may have another referendum in Quebec also. And if we have a referendum in Quebec, I will be for the yes side, because we need a constitutional crisis for these establishment politicians in Ottawa, Poilievre and Carney, to understand and to respect the Constitution. And they're not doing that. If you don't respect the Constitution, you will have these independentist movement all across the country. The only way to answer that is to go back to our Constitution that they don't respect, because they're spending money that we don't have in provincial exclusive jurisdictions, in healthcare, in education. You must not do that if you respect the Constitution. And that's why in Quebec people are not happy. They want more autonomy. And that's why here in Alberta they want more autonomy. So we need to send a strong signal to these politicians, conservatives and liberals, that the status quo is not acceptable for Quebec or for Alberta. And if Alberta has a deal with Carney, that deal will be the same for every province. So we can have a constitutional peace. But if not, that would be the end of this country. I don't wish that. I don't want that. I'm doing politics at the federal level. But we have the solutions. But, these politicians, conservative liberals, they don't want to understand. And I don't understand Poilievre, that is a member of parliament from Alberta, that is not, fighting for Albertans. He's not fighting, he's taking your vote for granted. And now you have a new coalition, Poilievre and Carney together, saying to Albertans, lying to Albertans, telling them if you vote to start the process, it's a vote for the independence. It's a lie. It's not true. They're using fear. And Poilievre is doing that with Carney. So we cannot trust them. And that's why the People's Party is there for every Canadian and for Albertans.
Do you think Albertans can still take lessons from Quebec's previous referendums in history? You say a potential third might be coming up. Are there still any lessons Albertans can still take ahead of October?
Yeah, I believe so. Just remember, the last referendum that we had in Quebec in 1995, that was about the secession. The question was clear, not that the question that you have today. It's not about the secession. It's about to be respected. But in Quebec in 1995, that was about the secession and the independence of Quebec. But the yes side didn't win with 49% support. The no side, the federalist side, won with 51. So with a very thin margin, what happened after that? You can think that, oh, the federal government and Ottawa and all these politicians will understand and they will decentralize and to be sure to give more autonomy to Quebec and other provinces. They did the opposite. They created national programs in exclusive provincial jurisdictions, in daycare, in healthcare, in dental care, in pharmacare. All that it's under provincial jurisdictions. Healthcare is 100% of provincial jurisdictions, but the federal government interfere in these jurisdictions, and the federal government is telling provinces, do what I want. If you don't do that, you won't have the money. That's not a real partnership. That's imperial federalism. That's the federal government in Ottawa telling Quebec or Alberta or other provinces what they can do or what they cannot do in their own jurisdictions. So that's why I call that the imperial federalism in Ottawa. We need to stop that, and the only way is to have that constitutional crisis that will wake up these establishment politicians in Ottawa to listen if they want to keep this country alive.
You were here in Lethbridge speaking to people yesterday. You'll be in Calgary later tonight. Just what are those conversations that you're having with just the average Alberta, and maybe what are some angles and opinions that you're hearing from them?
Yeah, what they're telling me, Maxime, it's a very important referendum. We may lose our pension. I said, that's a lie, because I want to tell them that's not about separation. Yes, you can speak about separation. That may be down in the future, a little bit later, but it's about to start a process to have a real referendum on secession. So that will give bargaining power to Danielle Smith. I'm telling you, you can have a discussion about the secession, what will be an independent Alberta. That's a good discussion. It's great to have that discussion if you want to have that discussion, but you must have the real discussion. Do you like the status quo, yes or no? Or do you want something new? If you want something new, give the power to your premier, Danielle Smith, to negotiate and sit at the table with Carney and tell Carney, if you don't give us our autonomy, we will have a referendum on secession and we may leave. They must understand that. What I don't like, it's what the Conservatives are doing in this province. They're telling Albertans, if you vote to start the process, because it's not a yes or no on the independence. There's two options in that question. The first, remain a province, the status quo. The second, start the process. But the Conservatives in this province are telling Albertans, if you vote to commence and start the process for a referendum a little bit later, it's for the secession, and you will rip up the Constitution. You will destroy the Constitution. We won't have this country. It's a lie. It's not that. And I'm listening to Albertans, and I believe that they're mad. They're tired of all that. They just want to be respected, and they have a great opportunity, October 19, to be respected by voting to start that process.
I also would like to ask you about Canada's current relationship with the United States and the Trump administration. I just kind of want to ask if referendums like here in Alberta and a potential one in Quebec, if they have any precedent on how it may affect the relationship with the United States.
But the relationship right now with the U.S. is, as you know, it's not the best one. We need to improve that. But we need to put the real questions on the table. I've said, for a long time that we must put the supply management cartel on the table. That's the cartel in dairy, poultry, and eggs, to be sure to have a good deal with President Trump, because that is what he wants. And for us, it would be good, because the cartel, we have food inflation in this country, and Canadians are paying twice the price for milk, poultry, and eggs if you look at the prices in the US. So for the Canadian consumers, it will be important to abolish that cartel. And for the relationship with the US, it would be great. It would be easier to have a good deal with the Americans. So I believe that we must do that. And that debate about, the referendum that you will have in October here in Alberta, I believe that the Americans are looking at it, and we'll see. But it's important for them to have a good relationship with Alberta and with Canada. They need our export. They need our natural resources. They need our minerals. And so I believe that, we'll be able to have a deal if we have the real negotiation and if we put on the table the most important issue for the US and for Canadian consumers, that cartel in milk, dairy, and eggs. It's unfair for Canadian consumers. We are paying more than twice the price, and we are creating, food inflation with that cartel.
All right, then. Just lastly, just kind of what's next for you after having these conversations? You're going to continue your road trip across Alberta, and what are you going to keep doing up until October?
Yeah, if they want me here, I will be here, and I will be part of that campaign. I'm here for a week. I may come back another week, a little bit later. And I like what I'm doing because, people are curious about the Quebec experience with the two referendums that we had. So yes, I can speak about that, but I'm a politician. I want to be elected at the federal level. I'm doing politics with conviction and passion, and I believe that we have the solution for this country, for Alberta, for Quebec, and that's an opportunity for me to tell them what is the position of the People's Party on all these important matters for Albertan. And I believe that they know that, if they want to have real changes in Ottawa, they need to support the People's Party candidates at the next general election. So for us, it's a way also to build the organization for the People's Party in Alberta, being ready for the next election in 3 years. And, our program, it's always the same. We are fighting for people. We want a federal government that will stop to interfere in provincial jurisdictions, and we want that radical decentralization. We want more autonomy for Alberta, but also for Quebec, for New Brunswick, for Manitoba. And we just want these establishment politicians in Ottawa to respect the Constitution. And like that, you won't have any problems. Everything will be okay, and you'll have a constitutional peace. But we don't have a constitutional peace because of the policies that are coming from Ottawa.
Maxime, would you like to touch on anything else before we wrap up?
Well, if people want to know more about the People's Party, they can go on our website, peoplespartyofcanada.ca. They can read our platform. They can follow me on X, Maxime Bernier. And also they can go on our website, look at the tour. I'll be here in Alberta until Saturday morning, and I may come back also for another tour. It's very important. And my main message for Albertan, read the questions that you'll have in front of you for that referendum, and just think at your own future. We want you to be part of this country, but we want you also to be respected by the conservative, the liberals, and we want Ottawa to get out of your jurisdictions and give you everything that you need, that you have, to build a prosperous province, because if we have a strong Alberta, we'll have a strong Canada.
Maxime, it was a pleasure speaking to you. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you again.